sustainability, a keyword that I think you already heard a lot in the introduction, and of course, a reduction of congestion. There are a couple of numbers that in this, I think this is not, there are a couple of numbers that show how this is actually happening. This is happening, and this is not just a futuristic future. The future starts now. The fundraising is already at 6.8 billion. There are 600 startups in the advanced air mobility sector, 200 projects already, concept already developed. And it is the orders have went, let's say, beyond the 6,500 in the 2021. So many players, many companies across the world are betting hard and on the advanced air mobility. We have today an amazing panel that will help discuss about it. That these are all leaders that are shaping this sector, this innovative sector. I will start from my left. Captain Suleiman Al-Mohamedi is responsible in GACA for safety standard and for sustainability and environment. We have Patrick Chartrand, which is the managing of HECO, is one innovative venture of CIO. It's one of the global technology leaders. They are leader in the operating aircraft mobility systems. Eric Cotet is the CEO of Jonter Mobility, one of the leader manufacturer of eVTOLs. He has a multi-year experience in engineering and manufacturing and has worked already in the Bombardier before. Sylvain Ducat. Sylvain Ducat is a fellow planner of VPorts, one of the leaders in the vertiport design, building, and operation. He has also a former experience as urban planner, which we will see is quite relevant in this domain. Michael Diamond is the managing of a partner of Next Capital Partners, investment banking and financial advisor in the advanced air mobility. Their study and economic model are a reference in the sector. They are supporting, just to give an idea, VPorts in a large funding in the sector. Then we have Arnaud Martinez, the CEO of the helicopter company, the local helicopter operator in Saudi. He has more than 20 years of experience in the general aviation. He has covered managerial roles in all, I think, the segment that we can imagine. and then just to finish, thank you for being here, Ken Stewart is from New Air. New Air is a no-profit organization leading in operation of advanced air mobility. They are designated from FAA for the unmanned systems, and he is actually the one that will tell us on how all the components and the operation will be integrated. In the 1 hour time that we have, I would like to cover the ecosystem of the advanced air mobility. I think what is important is really to capture how, in order to be successful, all the components needs to be all coordinated and all integrated. We will use this framework that will first go along the business case, demand, supply, but most importantly, the economic development. And then we will tackle with our panel a little bit the enablers, like the infrastructure, the financing, the technology. I will start probably with Arnaud, that he's the CEO of a company already operating in the kingdom, traditional business. He has created from scratch this company with ambitious plan. And I would ask him how the advanced air mobility is affecting his plan, how they are planning to cope with it. It's a menace, it's a threat, or this is an opportunity?
So thank you for asking the question, but definitely it's an opportunity. We cannot see that as a threat. We are a new company, 3 years, as you said, 3 years' time. So we have as you said, we started from scratch. So we have the opportunity to build with a phasing approach. It will be a journey. So it's a fantastic opportunity to plan for it. We started 3 years ago. It's an opportunity because we can start with the right platform. As I said, it's a journey. So we start with helicopters, new technology. We focus on the engine, the gas emission footprints. Sustainability will be part of the journey as well. So we have the opportunity to develop our relation with our authority, which is a massive key stakeholder of that advanced air mobility as well. So we are learning from our 3 years. In 3 years, we are learning how, from many challenges that we face commonly with the authority as well, and on the regulation side and everything. So in the meantime, it's an opportunity as well because we are 100% owned by PIF. And PIF is a key enabler for the Saudi Vision 2030. So the objective has been set. The question is not if, the question is by when we will be reaching that arrival line.
Thank you, Arnaud. But do you think that advanced, these eVTOLs are a competitor of a helicopter or not?
It's an endless discussion about, that was the same discussion between drones and helicopters. For me, it's a complement, right? We cannot, that's the future. We cannot be scared about the future. We need to plan for it. And that needs to be planned in the present. That needs to be planned from now. So in our case, we invested a lot in the right platform just to focus on the right technology right at the beginning. This is a chance because we are new. We don't have all this also DNA to change. It's new also for the industry, for the ecosystem. When we talk about GACA, I don't have to fight against the authority because of the huge legacy. Its rotary is something new for everyone, including with Captain Suleiman and GACA. So we can put everyone around the same table and plan for it. So it's definitely not a threat. It's definitely a complement.
That's great to hear. So actually, no legacy could be an opportunity for Saudi that is shaping a so ambitious aviation sector. And Eric, you are a new entrant, an innovative company that is on the advanced air mobility. So should we expect, since there is this complementarity, an intensification of partnership between new entrants and existing players, airline, even airports? I think we all see that this is happening.
Yes. So actually, just to come back to the previous question, which makes a link with it, I think that, you know, I would see a helicopter as being like buses and trucks. The eVTOL in the short term will be more as passenger car, so electric car. So they are complementary to each other. The payload and the distances that we will be able to achieve will be for the next decade really short, and the payload will be really minimal. So I think that they are complementary. So, but that still makes it, you know, operators as potential partners. You know, the usage of our aircraft is dual. So we would first start as, you know, probably parcel delivery. So the UPS, FedEx, and all that. And we would also have, we have a modular configuration when we take the seats off, and we can have passenger during the day and parcel delivery during the night, for example. So that brings a lot of potential partnership. OEMs, as we know them, the bigger players like Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier. I think that, you know, and I've been working at Bombardier for many years, and I know even if these are good companies, the agility to be able to start from scratch from a clean sheet and come with an eVTOL is a big challenge. So at the end, I think that most of the smaller companies will probably get into some kind of relation where they would contribute and probably some, you know, buyback or whatever. But I think that there are a lot of potential synergy related to that.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Looking at it more on the macroeconomic let's say, dimension. Patrick, I know with the CIA you are collaborating with the government of Quebec and Canada. And part of this huge investment that you are planning in this project is about the development of capabilities, training, and the new. Can you tell more? Because I think it's quite an important aspect for the vision of Saudi to know how the advanced air mobility can contribute to the economic development of the kingdom.
Yes, definitely. So, a quick word about CAE. We've been there 75 years. We're considered the worldwide partner of choice for training and in context of immersive situations. So we build simulators, we build training programs, and we are fully aware of the shortage of current pilots in civil aviation and business aviations. And we are expecting also an important demand for pilots for eVTOL devices. So we are putting in place the various technologies to actually allow that. And for that reason, the Quebec government has invested $1 billion, so $1 billion over 5 years, to help us out in developing that sector, that specialty sector of training eVTOL pilots across the world.
Yeah. So pilot will be one of the potential bottlenecks, and the capabilities is crucial.
It is, yes.
Getting back to you, Eric, on starting to look a little bit more on the enablement of this ecosystem, the technology, even the more prudent, let's say, projection. We have done some simulations. In the 2040, we could have 200,000 passenger eVTOL flying over city, which is 7 times the number of helicopters. It's a lot of aircraft. Are the OEM ready for scaling up the right capacity with a competitive cost in a model that is somehow similar to the automotive one? Where do you stand as an OEM on this?
Yeah, so I think that, in the last decades and a bit more, we've seen a lot of companies moving from the traditional way of building aircraft to composite. And in our case, we're moving away from the typical composite to thermoplastic. I think we need to be able to reach some, very high number of delivery per year. So we will go with the technology that will eventually be on larger aircraft. Again, Airbus, Boeing, everybody is looking for thermoplastic, but this is used mainly in the secondary structures. So primary structure is where we're going to be looking for, what we're going to be looking for to be able to produce hundreds and hundreds of aircraft and units. So it's going to be, pure compression molding of composite or thermoplastic resin with the carbon fiber matrix. So anyway, I think that, we need to see this. It's not traditional aerospace, where it's closer, like you just mentioned, to automotive, but with the security and safety level that, aerospace has been used to. So it's really an hybrid, and we've never been to that. But I think that the technology is there. Thermoplastic, for example, is not used today because of pressurization and high altitude. These aircraft will fly not very high without any pressurization. So we can introduce, and this is a good test bench to promote new technologies. And even if these are, small aircraft, they will be fly-by-wire. They will have, all the glass cockpit, everything that, is found on a latest and greatest generation of aircraft.
Thank you, Eric. And then it's good to see that there is much more than not just the batteries that everybody is talking about when it comes to technology. And in this sense, probably can tell us even more, because in addition to the aircraft, there is one layer of technology that needs to enable all this ecosystem, which is quite sophisticated, and where all the safety and all the acceptance maybe depends. You, with your company, you are specialized in integrating the air traffic control with digital solution for this advanced air mobility.
Exactly. We focus very much on the associated elements, everything kind of beyond the aircraft. So radar systems, ground-based sensing, um, weather under 400 feet, all the things that are really important to making the whole ecosystem safe. And we do that by digitizing all that. We run a 80-kilometer corridor that you can fly unmanned aircraft 80 kilometers beyond visual line of sight. And that's fully integrated into the airspace. We operate out of an airport in North America. We're an FAA designated site. And so what we do is we digitize kind of those three aspects. It has to meet the 10 to the negative ninth safety that the FAA needs. It needs all the technology, which is a new world. When we talk about evolution, today most of our ATM is on-prem, local loop, or private loop. All of this in the future is all federated, much like the internet. Where do you get your data from? And has to have this kind of autonomous, trusted framework that you have to build this into. So that's really where we put the focus on. We look at the aircraft that Eric and his organization manufactures, and we say, what are all the associated elements that get that flying at the safety level that's required by the FAA?
Thank you, Eric. Keeping talking about infrastructure, of course, we always hear and read a lot about the new aircraft, the model, about the eVTOLs. But one of the key, let's say, enablers is the ground infrastructure, the VPorts. Sylvain, VPorts is working on this. You design, you build, and you operate VPorts. How the infrastructure, what are the key requirements in terms of infrastructure? How they look like, how they integrate in our urban mobility?
Well, the best comparison we can make, you could compare vertiports to heliports. Basically, you need something between 5,000 square meters to up to 15,000 square meters. And it's a small building because people will get onto the eVTOL and go away. So the problem is not the infrastructure. Actually, some challenges depending on the markets. So we're thinking of locations, first of all, in some industrial areas where we have cargo. We're thinking of the market also in terms of healthcare for the transportation of organs or people who have to be rescued. So they have to think of a location close to on the roof of a hospital. And in terms of transportation of people, there are two markets: the regional air mobility, so from one city to another, with the range of the eVTOLs varying between 200 and 300 kilometers. So that's a big advantage because eVTOLs could fly at a speed of about 250 to 300 kilometers per hour. So within an hour, you cover a distance of 300 kilometers. So that's an advantage for regional air mobility. And then you have to think of those locations of the vertiports for the regional air mobility. The latest market will be the urban air mobility itself. And there are other challenges then, because you have to think of vertiports integrated within the city where people do live. Now, vertiports and eVTOLs have a big advantage compared to helicopters. It's the noise. There's no noise or less noise with eVTOL. So the challenge we have in terms of social acceptability with helicopter is mainly the noise that it provokes, whereas eVTOLs has something between 55 to 70 decibels. So these are the advantages. In terms of infrastructure, basically, it's something similar to a heliport, and it depends on the market where you can locate it, either in the industrial area, or it could be on a commercial mall, or it could be downtown area also.
So we are going to replace our parking in a garden with the vertiports in all the villas.
And there's again, it's not such a big challenge because it's happening, and we can really rapidly establish ourselves on that matter.
Jokes apart, I think that the social acceptance in this has quite a key role. I think that, Patrick, your contribution in a player like VPorts is exactly to help them in let's say, ensure that this is going to happen in a smooth way. What are the key criteria you use? What are the key elements you look at when you have?
So we're actually super happy to be working with VPorts because it allows us to actually develop this immersive technology around digital twins. So we're actually able to create a 3D model of a city with all of the infrastructure data connected live to that city. So it gives you a 3D dashboard of all the stakeholders before you start making the choice or the decision of where to position the VPorts in relation with electricity infrastructure. We have to consider that these things need to be recharged once in a while. We have to think about urban mobility, bus routes, taxis, shareable bikes and whatnot. You have to think of social acceptability at the sense of if it's an historical neighborhood, maybe you don't necessarily want to put a VPort there, or at least you want to use a tool that is compelling and that's visual enough so that the citizens can say, okay, I see the project, I vote yes, right? So if we provide to the citizens across the world the tool to actually view the project, view the eVTOL to move about, hear the noise with immersive experience, then we're able to go and get the social acceptability of the project before we even start constructing anything. So that's basically what we do with Project Echo over at CAE.
And I read that in the last statistics, social acceptance and advanced air mobility is growing faster. We are at 65%, if I'm not wrong, which is quite impressive for any technology that is quite new. We were discussing with Arnaud about the acceptance of a helicopter, and then there we could open a chapter. But I would focus now more on the funding. All this infrastructure, of course, requires huge funding. I share a couple of numbers about the funding raised so far, and if I'm not wrong, this is mainly at the moment focused on the aircraft. Do we expect a rebalancing? How is the accessibility for funding, Michael, for infrastructure? And what are the drivers of making one investment in this infrastructure viable and sustainable?
Very good. So as an investment bank and as investors in aerospace, we are very excited about the investment prospects for advanced air mobility. Firstly, the infrastructure costs relative to other modes of transportation is really quite low. If you look at a city such as Riyadh or Montreal, the cost to build out ground infrastructure will be in the range of $200 to $300 million US. And that's very affordable when one expects that the revenue forecasts are measured in billions of dollars. For Riyadh, we think the market opportunity is about 7 to 8 billion US. That's the revenue potential ticket sales, if you like. It will grow to that size in about 25 years. And that's plenty of revenue to be able to support payments to bondholders who will finance the infrastructure. And there are really 4 supply chains that you have to think about when investing in this new mode of transportation. The 4 supply chains include, of course, the ground infrastructure, which is a more traditional construction type of infrastructure, but also the air traffic management side of it, because low altitude airspace has to be invested in. We need new systems and capabilities and technologies to ensure the safe separation of eVTOLs from drones, from conventional helicopters, from aircraft, general aviation, that sort of thing. And it's the social acceptability depends on the integrity of these operations. Now, the other supply chains include the helicopter operators, for which we have one right here. The helicopter operators themselves are well equipped to enter into operations with electric vehicles. Helicopter operators are certificated already to fly under let's say the equivalent of FAA Part 135, but they have safety programs, training programs, pilots. They're all equipped, basically, to be able to do that. And of course, the last supply chain is the vehicles themselves. So when looking at urban areas, as investors, we want to make sure that the business case to put our money to work in infrastructure is well supported by the expected demand, the social acceptability of these new systems in urban areas, because that too is fundamental. And thank goodness these electric vehicles are quiet, because if there was no quiet electric vehicles, there would not be an advanced air mobility market.
Thank you, Michael. So, Captain, it seems that the market is pushing hard. Many operators are ready, and they are very optimistic on the future of advanced air mobility. But of course, we are talking about flying cars. That is not an easy thing to implement, and with a lot of safety implications. How, as a regulator, you are trying to cope with this pressure, because everybody is looking at the regulator. That is the bottleneck now in this hype, and how you are balancing this sustainability with the safety, which are the two main pillars of your mandate.
Thank you, Obadu. Thank you very much, everybody. I think the voice needs to be raised a little bit. Thank you for asking me. I thought that you're going to forget and not ask me about the subject, and this reflects the reality today, that the industry has a louder voice than the authorities and the regulators, and it is expected and it is usual, because they want to penetrate markets, they want to push investments, and this is how we develop and how the economy moves forward, especially with the new technologies. Allow me to start with talking about a commonly observed mistake, that the relation between the authority or the regulator and the industry is a solid top-down relation, while such model is working very fine in implementing and enforcing of the regulation. However, when it comes to developing and stipulating regulations, it's more than a horizontal and interactive relation between the regulator and the industry. In the last 75 years, states led by the ICAO succeeded in developing regulations as required for the industry to develop, and also for the economics to prosper, and also at the same time achieves the required and acceptable level of safety. Now, over the last 75 years, we learned a lot of lesson learned, and one very solid lesson learned that we've learned from the past experience, that the regulations are never the sole product of a regulator. Rather, it's a collaborative work between the authority and the industry in order to achieve acceptable level of safety, where the investors can play a role and achieve their objectives, especially the business objectives. We in GACA, we realized from early stages that such emerging technologies are becoming reality. So we are working very hard in order to enable the markets to prosper, to develop, and also become one of the leaders in adapting those new technologies in the kingdom. Today we are partnering with NEOM and its joint venture with the German manufacturer Volocopter in a project that will act as an incubator and a test lab for such technologies, proof of concepts. So where we can, as a regulator, have an access into a reliable data where we can utilize, where we can capitalize in order to develop a regulatory framework that will enable the industry to achieve its objectives, and also at the same time we assure that the acceptable level of safety is achieved.
Thank you, Captain Suleiman. And already I would say that having the regulator sitting in a panel with all the other let's say, stakeholders of the ecosystem is the right concrete signal to the market that this is going to happen. And maybe to this, we have Arnaud here that has created from scratch a company in a sector, and probably even in a traditional, let's say, not innovative, he has experienced what does it mean collaborating with the regulator and facing a lot already of challenges. Is there any lesson learned that we can leverage for the journey that we are going to face in the advanced air mobility? Something that we can replicate?
Sure. The first lessons is that here, after 10 years personally here in Saudi Arabia and dealing with GACA, nothing is impossible. So if I have to recommend a place to invest on the eVTOL and on the air advanced mobility is in Saudi Arabia. Because this is the only place where you can, as you said, sit with your regulator on the same table with the end user, with the operator, with the OEM, and have a common roadmap. This is what we did 3 years back, and we are still doing it, learning from all the obstacles we face. But every time we see an obstacle, we sit together and we see that as just an opportunity to fix it. And that will be just a lesson taken for the air advanced mobility. So once again, this is the place. Not because I am in Saudi Arabia, just because we have the end user with the Giga project. Captain Soiban mentioned NEOM. Usually the customer acceptance will be the most difficult part. Here the customer is pushing us to go quicker. Usually the regulator is a showstopper. Here the regulator is pushing us to be ready quicker. And the operator that we are as THE, new, we can also plan for it right now. So it's the place to be. It's the full ecosystem is ready. So we just work all together. So GACA is a key enabler, definitely.
I think there is a place to be are the word that I would stop this panel. And I would, of course, maybe open the floor for in the few minutes we have left for some questions that I'm sure that the audience may have. And thank you very much for all of you for having us.
Maybe there is some questions?
Sorry? I don't know if there are questions from the audience. We have some microphones available.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm JP. My boss is sitting right opposite me. My question is for the panel. When are we going to engage with ICAO for the regulations that we need to make from the guidance materials and the standards and recommended practices? Are we talking a new next year, or how are we going to do that? Is there any plans? Is there any way to go forward? Because Captain Suleiman needs to prepare himself for this lot, and he's got to prepare his employees to make sure that he can develop a regulation in line with at least the best practice or the best standards. I'd like to hear from you gentlemen what you think about that.
So, Captain, I think the question is probably for you, if there is a plan for shaping the regulation and ensuring that the advanced air mobility in the kingdom can become reality, starting from certification and all other. Is that the question? No.
Yeah. It is a dilemma for states to develop regulations for such emerging and fast developing technologies. And also one other elements that increasing the complexity of the dilemma is that such technologies does not have the international dimension where ICAO can play a role. It is domestic by nature. So although the ICAO and its panel of experts have done some fantastic work in developing some guidance materials to states where they can incorporate in their national regulation with regards to drone. I believe they developed a manual specifically for the drone, and the panel is continuously working and developing such standards. And I think from that panel of experts, there are some talks and studies about the urban air mobility concept, which is, if we talk about the concept of traffic management, goes under the unmanned traffic management, the UTM concept. This is basically what ICAO role is for the time being. But I believe it's going to be evolved when such technologies or the new modes of air mobility integrates more with the international air transportation.
And maybe, if I may add, on the technology side of it, the spectrum is really wide. Right now, there are more than 150 companies chasing to be the first one to certify the aircraft. Most of them are going, and I'm talking on the FAA standard, but Part 23 and Part 25, which is the aircraft and standard certification path. In our case, we are at the other end. We will be certifying under Part 29, which is the rotorcraft certification. So there will be not many amendments to it. So that makes it a lot easier. That's on the manufacturing aspect of it. On the operation side, also of the business, we could use tomorrow Part 135 operators path, because we will be considered as a helicopter. So we will be able to use helipad as they are today. We need to bring the charging aspect of it, but I think in terms of the authorities, we will also be an enabler to test some of the other components of the ecosystem, because most of the companies will be facing challenges going through certification because of the safety requirement. And one good example is the fact that if you lose full power on these kind of aircraft, some of them have a configuration where they don't fly. They are flying because of the motor, but they don't glide. So this will be a challenge, because you either use ballistic parachute to be able to control the descent or nothing. So that will be hard. In our case, we have a main rotor, so we can fall into auto rotation like a helicopter. So full collective down, we auto rotate, and we have a fixed wing, so we can also glide. So that will make it also easier to introduce it to the market. So the spectrum is going to be very wide, I think.
I don't know if there is a couple of questions, one here and one there.
A very good afternoon. It has been a very nice panel, and to see this AAM coming up. My question is, have two parts. One is that this eVTOL is a very wide of flying equipment, starting from vertical takeoff to fixed wing also. So how the VPorts are going to cater for this variety of the eVTOLs to handle into the urban, particularly into the urban cities where we have a limitation of place?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question. How the VPorts will what?
How the VPort will take care of this variety of the eVTOLs to be handled at the same character.
Somebody, you want to go?
Yeah, I can go first. Well, at the vertiport level, it will be essentially, well, a landing pad is a landing pad. There's a certain diameter, for one thing. But then all the services to these various devices might be slightly different from one manufacturer to another. Charging time, space to actually park the device, maybe some punctual maintenance, at certain level. So this will be part of the numerous challenges that we'll see emerge. Yeah. And did you want to
go on, Michael, or?
Well, a couple of points I think I would make just as an investor. One is that we want to invest in vertiports that can support a number of different operators, which means also a number of different vehicles. So we like the public concept, public vertiport concept. There are companies like Joby who would like to build and control infrastructure in cities so that only their vehicles can access these new facilities. And if that's the case, we're not an investor in those. We want to see very smart vertiport design that is capable of recharging, perhaps also refueling with hydrogen vehicles that are hybrid vehicles. And so there's a lot of care that has to go into the, it's not just a heliport. These are very sophisticated platforms. There's a lot of technology. The air traffic control side of it is very important as well. Being able to land an eVTOL with great precision and care requires that there be radio navigation beacons installed at or close to the vertiport. So it's a very complex, multi-system, multi-integration challenge that impacts the attractiveness from an investment standpoint, as well as safety and other factors.
Thank you, Michael. I think there was another question here.
Hello, everyone. This is Mohammed. Thank you very much for this great panel. I actually have a quick question about the pilot license requirements. I'm not sure which questions goes to who exactly.
You ask.
Patrick?
We will allocate.
Yeah. So is it going to be tough, or I may phrase it, is it going to be the same as if someone would like to get his commercial pilot license in terms of the flying hours, in terms of the experiences or any additional degree?
Yeah, maybe. Go ahead. But the requirement in terms of hours will be around 250 hours to be able to be certified. The complexity, I'm a helicopter pilot, and I can tell you that this is not an easy toy to play with. You know, you always have collective, cyclic, and the pedals at the same time. This kind of aircraft will be much, much easier to handle and to pilot, especially in hovering. Hovering a typical helicopter, and the smaller it is, the more difficult, you know, to maintain stability. These aircraft will be really a lot more easy to stay to have in a stable position. You won't have 3 commands at the same time and function that would change if you are hovering and translation. So that will make it a lot easier. But still, it's going to be a challenge to train that many people because you cannot bypass any steps. So if you need to make these 250 hours, you know, you will have to be trained. Will we take people from the helicopter pool of pilots or aircraft pilots? That we don't know. It will depend, but we foresee that in the first few years, we will probably drain a few helicopter pilots down to that activity. But at the end of the day, you know, it's also going to be a question of who will be interested in flying these. It's a lot of work. It's commuting a lot. We see that, you know, there is a big shortage in pilots today. You know, a lot of pilots are, you know, being looked at. So it's even if it's easier, it's still going to be a challenge.
I would like to add also, it is foreseeable that some of the tasks that current pilots are going through as modern pilots will be eventually will evolve using artificial intelligence to actually support and make it a lot easier. If you think of the early drones versus the drones that you can buy now, there's so much assistance, you know, that the drones are stabilizing or self-stabilizing in the case of winds and whatnot. So it is foreseeable to expect that in the midterm, as we move forward. However, it will require, though, that the regulator be flexible in at some point reducing the number of hours required by the pilot, because now the technology will be there to assist the pilot.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may comment, the last comment, and I'm sure that the industry is targeting a pilotless aircraft, but this cannot happen over time. We need reliable performance data that shows that those aircraft will fly with the at least same acceptable level of safety that we are achieved today with the piloted aircrafts. Then with a phased approach, by the end of the decade, of the current decade expected, that we will allow the pilotless aircraft to be operated, whether VTOLs or others.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we finish our time, and maybe one last question. If well, I see many. Let's keep this one question here.
And I think the pilotless aircraft motivated people to talk.
Hi, good afternoon. A simple question. Economy of scale for such urban air mobility. How much it would cost for individuals like us to buy one unit?
Michael, you want to take that?
I can answer that. Well, I can estimate that. Initially, the ticket costs will be somewhat high. And part of the reason for that is that regional air mobility is likely to be one of the early use cases. So regional air mobility as opposed to air taxi, different. Regional air mobility, air taxi. So we think that the price of tickets for the first few years of operations will be a few $100s US. And as time goes on, as more and more vehicles come online, more vertiports are established, volumes increase, the price should come down to that of an Uber. So if you have Uber in this town or not, you get the idea though. You should be able to go from point A to point B for $50, $100, something like that.
Michael, maybe I misunderstood the question. Did you ask what is the price of the eVTOL device itself, or the price of a ride?
Yeah.
Price of the unit. Price of the
I misheard.
eVTOL.
Yeah, that I can probably tell you the average. It's going to be between 1.5 and 2 million per unit. If I take the overall spectrum of what ours is going to be cheaper, but the objective also in terms of operation and is to get down to something between $2 to $4 per mile per passenger. So that comes exactly to the Uber analogy. But typically an aircraft would cost between 1.5 and 2 million.
$1 a kilometer.
Canadian dollars, so it's really cheap.
I think there was another question there. We have, I think, time for just one question, one last question. I see the timekeepers waving to me.
And where is the mic?
Can you give the microphone, please? There.
Hi.
I will give you.
Over here. So my name is Abdurrahman Amri, NEOM Vertical Air Mobility. Just my question directed to you, Mr. Patrick. You mentioned something about investment, $1 billion.
Yes.
Which is a huge investment in pilot training.
Yes.
My question actually, okay, what are the curriculum that you are developing? Is it something you are building on current helicopter pilot curriculum, or is it something combined with unmanned aircraft system, remotely piloting,
yes, so
training as well?
So to answer that, it's a 5-year program that the government is funding. It's essentially to create immersive training technology, as well as new simulators to be able to train pilots. So at this point, we don't have the requirements, the specific requirements for the length of time, the duration, or the training path for each student, but we're actually building all the hardware and software tools and enablers around that training.
Is it going to be like on a national level or international level?
That's a great question.
IFR
It's a great question.
VFR
I think we'll have to tag along with the large organization, regulating organizations. So ICAO, FAA, European as well, and GACA clearly.
How about NEOM?
About who?
NEOM.
Yes, absolutely. We'd be more than happy to actually open a training center.
All right, thank you very much.
So last question, I promise there.
This question is for the manufacturers. What is the level of standardization between different equipments? Like, for example, instead of having charging ports, what about swapping the batteries? So when the equipment lands, you can just swap the batteries. So what is the percentage of standardization?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that right now, there are a lot of people that are going through the technology development, and I think that most of the companies are not competing against each other. I think that right now we're trying to make the technology evolve. I spent the week last week with the Joby people. I was with Volocopter last week also. So everybody is working toward trying to establish a standard. Some of the company are more vertically integrated. So like you mentioned, Joby is doing everything from A to Z. And some others are more integrator, like we are. So there are no standards right now, but we can say that, in terms of battery consumption, for example, that will range from current battery, automotive battery available today, so 175 watt-hour per kilo, up to 300. So there is no standardization in that sense because they don't use the same power. But eventually, the charging devices that will standardize through time. But at this point, everybody's just trying to piggyback on what's being developed, and we don't want to work in an enclosed, kind of approach because we will eventually not meet the target because this is coming. We didn't talk much about the introduction time, but it's coming in 20. Some of the competitors are promoting 2025, 2024. We realistically think that this will not happen before 2026. So we still have a few years still to standardize, but there is not much. On the charging side, for example, we will go with induction charging. So some people will go with battery swapping. So it will come eventually, but nothing at this point.
Thank you, Eric. I need to stop here. And I want to really thank you, this amazing panel, for being here, for their time. I know that you are going to be around. Probably, if there are some other questions, you can take the opportunity. And thank you all for the attention and to be here.
Very bravo.